We're going to go right into our next briefing, which is the group that was advised by Professor Palmer, and it's on the Climate Stewardship Act of 2021. And this is Megan Ort.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Ort, and today I'll be presenting on behalf of the Climate Stewardship Act Workshop Group, discussing our program design. I'd like to give a quick thank you to our output team members, Leanna, Molly, and Rosie, as well as the entire team, and our faculty advisor, Dr. Palmer. So, the Climate Stewardship Act of 2021, introduced to Congress this year by Senator Cory Booker, seeks to address the issue of global anthropogenic climate change. In the U.S., climate change exacerbates other national and local issues that disproportionately impact low-income communities, indigenous nations, and communities of color. For example, the increasing frequency and severity of wildfires in the American West and the urban heat island effect. The Climate Stewardship Act proposes nature-based solutions to these issues by incentivizing certain land management practices in farms, forests, and wetlands. For this semester, we have chosen to focus on Title II, which addresses forests. Title II increases funding for a number of existing reforestation programs and creates several new programs with the intent of dramatically increasing the carbon sequestration potential of American forests while improving their resilience to the effects of climate change. Most notably, there will be a change in funding to the Reforestation Trust Fund from $30 million annually to $5.5 billion annually, which is an 18,000% increase. Title II also takes strides to address injustice in the U.S., from inequitable tree cover in urban areas and racial disparities in employment, especially after COVID-19. Overall, the bill calls for 1.7 billion trees to be planted by 2030, including 100 million in urban areas. To provide some political background for this bill, on the left are some environmental and indigenous forestry groups that endorsed a similar version of the Climate Stewardship Act in 2019, as well as some groups who have publicly expressed support this year. Since the 2021 iteration has yet to receive any public hearings, no groups have come out directly to oppose the bill, but because of its financial size, potential opposition may come from deficit hawk legislators and groups that oppose increased federal spending on climate change mitigation, like the ones listed on the right. We don't expect for this bill to pass in its entirety, but certain components could be adopted into other legislation. Considering that the current makeup of Congress contains a Democratic majority, elements may be incorporated into the upcoming reconciliation bill, which only requires a simple majority to pass in the Senate. The Climate Stewardship Act does contain several politically popular ideas, such as financially incentivizing voluntary land management practices as opposed to a top-down regulatory approach, as well as stimulating job creation. For these reasons, we have chosen to design and simulate implementation for Title II's new job creation program, the Climate Stewardship Corps. As outlined in Section 206 of Title II, the Climate Stewardship Corps will be established by the USDA Forest Service in consultation with the Department of the Interior. This program is modeled after Franklin Roosevelt's Civilian Conservation Corps of the 1930s and 40s, but incorporates an added emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It simultaneously addresses the environmental justice concerns and revitalizes the forestry workforce by recruiting young people from low-income and indigenous communities, as well as communities of color, and providing them with skill training and career development in environmental restoration and conservation. The legislation specifies that Corps membership is limited to 2 years and guarantees housing accommodations while in the Corps, fair compensation, and job placement assistance after the Corps program. The legislation also mandates that the Corps will perform at least 20% of the federal forest and wetland restoration projects outlined in the bill between 2021 and 2025, and 40% of the projects starting in 2026 and each subsequent year. We have identified 3 areas of discretion in the bill for which program design is needed: administration, post-Corps job placement, and program evaluation. I will begin with the administration portion of our program. Here is our flow chart designed to illustrate the administrative duties for the Climate Stewardship Corps. The Washington office of the Department of Agriculture's Forest Service, shown on the left, will be responsible for allocating funding and setting employment targets for the regional Forest Service offices in the center. These targets will be based on the unique contexts within each region. Once the regions have been assigned their targets and provided funding, the regional offices will oversee and coordinate with local NGOs, shown on the right, who will carry out the bulk of the on-the-ground personnel administration, such as outreach, communications, recruitment and hiring, and project and human resource management, including payroll and benefits and performance reviews. Finally, the responsibility would then shift back to the regional Forest Service offices to assign workers to their on-the-ground reforestation projects and provide specialized on-site training and housing once they arrive. We felt that this public-nonprofit partnership design would be best to fulfill the administrative needs for the program by providing the benefits of an established federal organizational structure while also utilizing the specialized partnerships with NGOs. The USDA Forest Service is best positioned to prioritize the funds and the workforce on a national level, and also coordinate projects on interstate lands as well as federal land projects in national forests, national parks, and lands managed by the Bureau of Land Management. On the other hand, the local NGOs are better equipped for community outreach and personnel management and can improve employment access for people who haven't historically worked with and benefited from the Forest Service in the past. Next up, in our design, post-Corps job placement assistance. We have chosen to utilize an existing program run by the Department of Labor and the USDA Forest Service called the Job Corps. The Job Corps will work with Stewardship Corps graduates to build an individualized job placement plan and connect them with employers in the nonprofit and private sectors as well as careers within government. The Job Corps then supports each individual for a full year after they gain employment. We chose this option because a crucial aspect of the Stewardship Corps is that members will be able to join the forestry industry in a more permanent role upon completing the program. The success of this element is essential in order to address the dwindling workforce in the forestry industry, which is struggling to replace mature workers with an infusion of skilled young foresters. A successful Stewardship Corps will also ensure that the benefits of this massive job placement program go to populations that have been historically marginalized and therefore underemployed. Though expanding the Job Corps will be labor and resource intensive, the program has proven to be highly effective for long-term employment and has been shown to positively impact earnings. And finally, we have decided that program evaluation will be conducted on an annual basis by the Government Accountability Office, or the GAO. The GAO is an independent, nonpartisan agency that evaluates and advises on government spending. The GAO will evaluate the Climate Stewardship Corps' success based on key performance and DEI metrics. For example, the percentage of participants with forestry or related jobs after completing the Corps within 1, 5, and 10 years, the demographic of Corps members in comparison to the regional makeup, and the effectiveness of training in preparing members for participation in reforestation projects. We chose this option because the GAO is less likely to be biased about the results than the USDA Forest Service. Additionally, because the GAO is a government agency, they may be particularly critical to ensure that the government funds are used as efficiently as possible and can advise on regarding reallocation. The primary drawback of this option is that the GAO might be less familiar with the Stewardship Corps' projects and may need to create additional roles to support program evaluation, as their specialty is in operational and financial management. However, we feel that the benefits of accountability, integrity, and reliability outweigh this drawback. The design choices presented here aim to best serve the goals of the Climate Stewardship Act and its new program, the Climate Stewardship Corps. With diversity, equity, and inclusion at the forefront of implementation, This program design will provide skills, training, and career development for its participants. And the efforts of the Stewardship Corps will ultimately support the broader goals of Title II of the Act, addressing the global climate crisis with proven land management practices that will improve carbon sequestration and climate resilience in American forests. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great presentation, Megan. I was wondering if you could delve deeper into why you chose to focus on Title II forests, and why not the agricultural or the wetland part of the bill?
Yes, good question. So you asked why we chose to focus on the Stewardship Corps itself. Right, so this is a huge bill. Last semester we covered the entire bill, agriculture, forests, and wetlands, and for this semester we decided to focus just on forests because it's so massive. And even within Title II, there's 4 new programs, but the Stewardship Corps we all were very attracted to because of the explicit DEI elements written into the bill to prioritize hiring for marginalized communities. But also, in our political analysis output, we found that this type of program is very politically viable at this time. Polling shows that there's a lot of political appetite to create a sort of civilian conservation corps revitalization. So, yeah, that's why we chose to hone in on this program.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. You did a great job. I just wanted to ask how the CSC would navigate creating a program that manages to provide a wide range of experiences for core participants, given that forest land is not, equally distributed. So some folks may be coming from an urban environment and other states that don't have as much abundant forest land. So could you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so that definitely played into our design for the allocation. Yeah, so the forests are definitely more in the American West, so more funding and workforce will be going there. And that was also a concern of ours in terms of supporting the Corps members once they've been hired, which is why we allocated NGOs to be in charge of the hiring as well as like continual HR throughout the Corps, so that if people are traveling to new areas, they will still have support from that local NGO that hired them initially. Does that kind of answer your question? Thank you.
Hi, Megan. Great presentation. I'm just wondering how this plan differs from that of the Biden administration's plan for the Civilian Climate Corps.
Right. So Biden has a plan that's very similar. It's almost the same, I think, which just kind of speaks to the political appetite. It's very much in the political ether. I don't know the exact details of Biden's plan, but I do think his version is a bit more broad. So the Stewardship Corps focuses only on land management, and Biden's plan might also include energy, like solar installation. But yeah, at the core, I do think they're kind of similar in wanting to create jobs specifically for underserved communities and paying them a fair wage and increasing access.
Awesome presentation, Megan. I was curious about the portion of the evaluation metrics that includes the percentage of participants who have forestry-related jobs in the future. I'm curious if you could describe a little bit more kind of the thought process that went into putting that into the plan, and I guess if the statistics look, I guess, or aren't up to par with what the program managers would expect, if there are any kind of mitigation measures for that.
I'm sorry, could you just clarify that?
Yeah, sorry. So just for context, I'm not sure how many forestry jobs there currently are, so I'm wondering if you have a pretty large program, what percentage of people realistically are going to be in forest management, maybe 10 years down the road, especially given how many career switches there are just in general in every field. So I'm
Right.
curious, kind of what happens if I guess, what would count as a success under that metric, and then what happens if the program is deemed not successful? Like, what are the improvement metrics or measures that could be enacted?
Right, I see your point. Yeah, we're just starting to have those discussions on program evaluation and, yeah, viability 10 years down the line, which is why we included related jobs. Yeah, if anybody from the evaluation wants to speak to this, that'll be definitely a part of our later outputs, figuring out what metrics can be applied and what the targets will be. But yeah, thank you for your question.
Very interesting presentation. For those of you who don't know, the CCC during the New Deal actually took a lot of people from cities all over the country and brought them all mainly to the West, although here in New York, parks like Riverside Park and Morningside Park were renovated, and Riverside Park was actually built by WPA and CCC workers who literally went upstate and quarried rocks. Those stones you see on the walls at Riverside Park were literally carried from upstate New York to make the park. So it was, there were 400,000 workers involved in it at its peak. So it is a very interesting political issue. The other issue that was raised about jobs I thought was interesting, because if you plant 1 billion trees, I have a feeling there'll be a lot more forestry jobs down the road. So we'll see about that. But in any case, very interesting presentation, and so far really excellent, everybody. So let's take a break before our last one, and then we'll do our final midterm briefing.